Chapter 13, The New Kingdom of Egypt, the General and the Woman Pharaoh. After the Egyptians learned how to fight from the Hyksos, the new kingdom of Egypt got more and more powerful. This is sometimes called the Golden Age of Egypt, because Egypt was richer than ever before. Pharaoh after Pharaoh came to the throne, ruled well, and kept the new kingdom of Egypt strong. We could never learn about all of these pharaohs, but we are going to read about two of the most interesting pharaohs, Thutmose I and his daughter, Hatshepsut. Thutmose I, the general. Before he became pharaoh, Thutmose I was a general in the Egyptian army. Leading the army into wars was what he did best, and he liked to fight. Thutmose helped the Egyptian princes drive the Hyksos out of Egypt. When the leader of the Egyptian princes became king, Thutmose was his right-handed man. Then Thutmose married his daughter, and when the king died, Thutmose became the new pharaoh of Egypt. His rule began around 1524 BCE. Thutmose decided that his job as pharaoh was to make Egypt's empire even bigger by conquering other countries. Thutmose's first battles were against the Nubians, who were trying to break away from Egypt. He went down and conquered the Nubian chiefs and reminded them that they were still part of Egypt. But that wasn't enough for Thutmose. Next, he took his army and followed the Hyksos all the way up to Canaan. He defeated the tribes living in the south part of Canaan and made the land part of Egypt. Thutmose was very pleased with himself. The Hyksos had come down and taken over Egypt. Now he had gone up and taken over the land of the Hyksos. The victory made him so happy that he wanted to keep on fighting. He turned his army east and he started to march. He conquered land all the way to the Euphrates River, but he didn't cross the river because Babylon was ruling between the Tigris and the Euphrates. Thutmose knew better than to start a fight with Babylon. By the time Thutmose died, Egypt was twice as big as it had been. Hatshepsut, the woman who pretended to be a man. Hatshepsut was a princess of Egypt, the daughter of a pharaoh. Her father, Thutmose, was one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs. Thutmose had 3 children, but his favorite was his daughter, Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut loved to listen to her father's stories of battles and conquest. She wanted to grow up to be a pharaoh too. But back in ancient times, most people thought that women were too weak to rule countries. In ancient Egypt, women were allowed to get married and have children. If they didn't want to get married, they could work at the temple serving the gods, or they could become dancers. But those were the only jobs women could have. So when the pharaoh Thutmose died, Hatshepsut's brother became the next pharaoh. Hatshepsut didn't think this was fair. Her brother was sick most of the time, and he didn't pay much attention to his job ruling Egypt. "I would be a better pharaoh than my brother," she told herself. "But he is a man and I am a woman. Will I ever get the chance to show what a good ruler I can be?" Hatshepsut's brother got sicker and sicker, and one day he died. He had only been pharaoh for 4 years before he died. He told Hatshepsut that he wanted his son to be the next pharaoh, but his son was just a baby. So Hatshepsut said to the Egyptians, "I will help my brother's son rule Egypt until he is old enough to be pharaoh on his own." The Egyptian people agreed, and Hatshepsut was finally able to rule Egypt. She wasn't the real pharaoh. Everyone knew that her nephew would soon be old enough to rule. But when that day came, Hatshepsut announced that she would not give up the throne. My father always meant me to be the crown prince, she told her people. He wanted me to become pharaoh rather than my brother. You can't do that, the people in the palace said. Only men can be pharaohs. Hatshepsut answered, but the god Amon-Ra told me that I would rule Egypt. He said, welcome, my sweet daughter, my favorite, the ruler of Upper and Lower Egypt. Hatshepsut, you are the pharaoh. So the gods themselves want me to rule Egypt. But no woman has ever been pharaoh, the people complained. Then pretend I am a man, Hatshepsut said, and she started to wear men's clothing. Whenever she sat on the throne, she even put on a false beard. Hatshepsut was so determined to be pharaoh that the Egyptians finally agreed to have her as their ruler. For over 20 years, Hatshepsut ruled Egypt, a queen pretending to be a king. She didn't fight any wars, but she did lead expeditions into Africa. There, she bought gold, incense, monkeys, elephants, and other things that the Egyptian people loved. She built more monuments than any other Egyptian queen. She ruled over the Egyptians until her death. Amenhotep and King Tut. Thutmose I and Hatshepsut were powerful rulers, but we remember two other pharaohs of Egypt for different reasons. The pharaoh Amenhotep tried to change the way that the Egyptians worshipped their gods. And we remember the pharaoh Tutankhamun because of the way he was buried. Amenhotep, many gods or one god. Amenhotep's father was pharaoh, so when he died, Amenhotep inherited his throne. He became pharaoh around 1350 BCE. He was the fourth pharaoh named Amenhotep, so he was known as Amenhotep IV. At first, Amenhotep acted like any other pharaoh. He made laws, he sent the army out to stop rebellions, he married a princess from Nubia and had a daughter. He worshipped all of Egypt's many gods. As a matter of fact, he was named after one of Egypt's most important gods, Amun, a god of the sun, who was sometimes called the king of the gods. Amenhotep sacrificed to Amun, gave money to his priests, and held big celebrations to honor this powerful god. But then something happened to Amenhotep. He decided that Amun didn't exist. As a matter of fact, he decided that none of Egypt's gods were real. The Egyptian people were horrified. After all, they worshipped dozens of gods. They were polytheists. Polytheism means the worship of many gods. The Egyptians thought that the gods controlled every part of life. The gods made the Nile flood. They made rain fall. They made women have babies. They provided food. They decided whether you would live or die. How could this pharaoh suddenly stop worshiping the gods? Amenhotep didn't pay any attention to what his people thought. His mind was made up. Instead of many gods, he believed there was only one god. He called this god Aten. The old gods of Egypt had looked like human beings, but Aten didn't look like a man. He had to be drawn by a symbol. Amenhotep did his best to drive all worship of the old gods, polytheism, out of Egypt. He closed temples and made priests stop performing rituals. He told people not to sacrifice to the old gods. He even changed his name so that he wouldn't be named after Amun, the king of the gods, anymore. Now, instead of Amenhotep, he wanted to be called Akhenaten. This name means worshipper of Aten. Amenhotep was the first Egyptian monotheist. Monotheism means worship of only one god. He spent much of his reign worshiping Aten. He built a whole new city with a huge new temple in it for Aten. He wrote poetry to his god. One of his poems says, "Earth brightens when you dawn in Lightland, when you shine as Aten of daytime. The entire land sets out to work. All beasts browse on their herbs. Trees, herbs are sprouting. Birds fly from their nests. Ships fare north, fare south as well. Roads lie open when you rise. The fish in the river dart before you. Your rays are in the midst of the sea. As long as Amenhotep lived, he kept the Egyptians from worshipping all their gods. But as soon as Amenhotep died, the Egyptians rebelled. They closed the temple to Aten. They reopened all their other temples. They went back to worshipping all the old gods of Egypt, and they erased Amenhotep's name from all the monuments he had built. They took him out of all their records. They moved out of his new city and let it crumble away to ruins. They were so angry at Amenhotep for trying to make them worship just one god that they tried to forget he had ever been pharaoh. Monotheism in Egypt had failed. Polytheism, the worship of many gods, had won after all. The boy buried with treasure, King Tut. Tut became king of Egypt when he was only 7. He grew up in the house of Amenhotep, the pharaoh who changed his name to Akhenaten. There, Tut was originally named Tutankhaten, a name honoring the god Aten. But when he became king, Tut changed his name to Tutankhamen, a name honoring Amun, the old king of the gods. King Tut helped to wipe out the worship of Aten. He encouraged the people to start worshiping the old gods again. He helped to erase Akhenaten's name from all Egyptian records. But King Tut did not have much time to rule. He died when he was 18. Tut was buried in a pyramid. You see, robbers knew that the pyramids of Egypt were full of treasure. They broke into the pyramids and robbed them of all their gold and jewels. Sometimes they even dumped the mummies of pharaohs out onto the floor and stole the golden coffins. So the Egyptians began to hide their tombs in the hills and mountains. They carved caves into the cliffs, put their pharaohs and treasures inside, and then blocked up the doors with stone to hide them. Their favorite place to bury pharaohs was a long rocky valley catacombed with caves and passageways. This valley, now called the Valley of the Kings, has 60 tombs in it, and the tombs are well hidden. Robbers never found King Tut's tomb. As a matter of fact, no one knew it was there for thousands and thousands of years. Over 3,000 years later, a man named Howard Carter was working in the Valley of the Kings. He had spent years looking for the tombs of the pharaohs. He found Hatshepsut's tomb. He was convinced that another royal grave was hidden in the Valley of Kings, but he was simply unable to find it. One day, Howard Carter was moving a stack of stones when he found something unexpected. A step. He ran for help. His men, digging all through the day, uncovered more steps, leading down to a door in the stone. On the door, Carter found a name in hieroglyphs, Tutankhamen. Carefully, Carter cut a hole in the door. He held up a light to the door. At first, all he could see was darkness. He moved his light from side to side. Suddenly, a beautiful golden gleam sprang out from the blackness. The room was full of gold. Carter's friends were pressing in behind him. "What do you see?" one of them asked. "Can you see anything?" "Yes," Howard Carter said. "Wonderful things." The workmen slowly pried the door open. In front of them was a room filled with treasures. King Tut's throne, golden statues of the young king, game boards inlaid with ivory and jewelry, rings, necklaces, jars, jewel-encrusted chests, figures of the gods and goddesses. All of these were crowded into King Tut's tomb. Howard Carter and his friends kept on exploring. They found a whole series of rooms, linked together by hallways. Each room held more treasures. Finally, they came to the last locked door. Carter opened it carefully. Inside, he found the body of the young king, Tutankhamen himself. At first, all Carter saw was a huge golden box. Then he realized that the box opened at the top. Inside this golden box, he found a heavy stone chest. Inside the stone chest, he found a golden statue of the king lying on its back. As soon as he touched the statue, he knew that it was actually a wooden coffin, carved to look like the king and then coated with gold. He pried the coffin open, expecting to see Tut's body. Instead, he found another wooden coffin covered with gold. And when he opened this coffin, he found yet another coffin, this one solid gold through and through. Carefully, he opened this final coffin. There was Tutankhamun's mummified body, wrapped in linen and soaked with spices. It was so well preserved that Howard Carter could even see the dead king's face. Soon, people began to say that there was a curse on Tut's tomb. The man who helped Howard Carter open Tut's tomb, Lord Carnarvon, died only 7 weeks after the burial chamber was first opened. Was this a result of the inscription found on the statue of Anubis, the god of death, inside Tut's treasure? The inscription reads, "It is I who hinder the sand from choking the secret chamber. I am for the protection of the deceased." 5 months after Lord Carnarvon's death, his younger brother also died unexpectedly. And that's not all. Howard Carter's pet canary was swallowed by a cobra on the very day that the tomb was opened. A cobra was also carved on Tut's mask so that it would spit fire at all enemies of the king. There were 26 people present when the tomb was opened. Within 10 years, 6 had died. But the others lived into old age. So you decide, was there a curse in Tut's tomb? Note to parents, Thutmose I was pharaoh of the 18th dynasty and ruled 1524 to 1518 BC BCE. Hatshepsut was also a pharaoh of the 18th dynasty and ruled 1498 to 1483 BC BCE. There are several pharaohs named Amenhotep. This is Amenhotep IV, 1350 to 1334 BC BCE, who married Nefertiti and changed his name to Akhenaten. Tutankhamun was born around 1343 BC BCE and died around 1325 when he was probably 18. Carter found his tomb in AD CE 1922.